Good evening and thanks for joining us. The federal government has been warning Canadians for months to be careful with their money and not go into debt too heavily. Well, now the government itself has some explaining to do. It has somehow lost track of $3 billion. $3 billion. The money was earmarked for anti-terror initiatives, but today in his latest report, the Auditor General said he can't figure out where the money went. He also raises red flags about Canada's search and rescue system, saying it's in such dire shape it needs to be rescued itself. We have complete coverage tonight on both stories, beginning with Shirley Engel on the missing money.
Donna, the Auditor General calls the missing $3 billion a missed opportunity to see if anti-terrorism measures are working. The NDP calls it almost criminal. Last week's arrests of two suspects alleged by the RCMP to be planning an attack on Via Rail, a reminder that over a decade after 9/11, the threat of terrorism remains. But the Auditor General says Ottawa hasn't been policing the billions spent on anti-terror measures since 2001.
It's important for there to be, a way for people to understand how this money was spent, and that summary reporting was not done.
A probe into the Public Security and Anti-Terrorism Initiative between 2001 and 2009 left his office puzzled. $12.9 billion set aside to keep Canadians safe, but Treasury Board can only account for $9.8 billion, meaning $3.1 billion vanished. The audit also found lax monitoring and reporting of results.
Will the Prime Minister hold his Minister of Public Safety accountable for this $3 billion boondoggle?
There's some lack of clarity. The Auditor General has made some suggestions on how we can be more clear in our tracking in the future. We will do that.
The department offered three possible explanations. Either the funding lapsed without being spent, was accounted for somewhere else, or was spent on something totally unrelated.
It's possible that some of this money was spent on things that really were not related to the initiatives. And that should only have happened if there was the appropriate approval.
The Auditor General didn't find anything to suggest any misspending by either the Tories or the previous Liberal government, but Canadians will likely never know where those billions ended up. Shirley Engel, Global News, Ottawa.
The Auditor General suggests the system designed to save lives of fishermen and others in distress is itself drifting into danger.
We're very concerned about the sustainability of search and rescue services in coming years.
Among the problems, too few airplanes designated for search and rescue missions, and many of those need to be replaced.
Aircraft where they have to, in fact, manufacture some of the spare parts. Helicopters that can't get all the way to Northern Ontario without being refueled.
He says a chronic shortage of pilots and trained crews puts the system in jeopardy. An ominous warning considering search and rescue has already faced heavy criticism in recent years, most recently for abandoning the search for the bodies of 5 Nova Scotia fishermen who got trapped in a storm at sea. The Harper government has promised replacements for the aging fleet of Buffalo and Hercules airplanes, but there's nothing to show for those promises, and the AG's report has the opposition pouncing.
Canadians need world-class search and rescue. Instead, Conservatives are offering world-class mismanagement. Is there anyone over there ready to apologize for the mishandling of this vital service?
He overlooks the fact that, in fact, the Auditor General said that search and rescue is working. Search and rescue is, in fact, an area in which we have made significant investments, Mr. Speaker.
But the government is short on specifics for when the new hardware will be delivered.
There are things that need to be dealt with as soon as possible in order to make sure that this service will be able to operate into the future.
At least response times are still acceptable. The Auditor General says search and rescue teams generally arrive when they should, but how much longer those times will hold up remains to be seen. Donna?
All right, Ross Lord in Halifax, thank you. There is much more in the Auditor General's report, including millions being misspent on EI and a complete lack of coordination on tackling diabetes in this country. If you want more details, you can go to our website, globalnews.ca.